I stopped working because my body was literally giving out, and my best friend's solution was to secretly fill out a loan application in my name for $18,000. I'm 32F, and the last year feels like everything in my life slowed down while everyone else kept moving at full speed. I stopped working last summer after my health got worse. It isn't dramatic in a visible way. I don't look sick. I can go out, I can sit normally, I can have a conversation without anyone noticing anything wrong. But if I push too far, my back spasms and I lose strength down one side of my body. Sometimes my leg just stops cooperating. Recovery takes days. My doctor told me flat out that continuing physical work was making it worse, not better. So I quit. Since then, it's been paperwork, medical appointments, waiting for decisions that keep getting delayed, and trying to make money last longer than it realistically should. I track every expense now. Groceries are planned down to the week. I sold things I never thought I'd sell just to keep a cushion in my account. My partner works full-time, but I've been stubborn about not letting him carry everything. I don't want to feel like someone being taken care of. My best friend, I'll call her R, has known me for 15 years. We grew up together. She's always been the kind of person who moves fast, who believes the next opportunity is right around the corner. New plans, new goals, new directions. I was usually the one listening while she figured things out. A couple of months ago, she started talking nonstop about this mentorship program she'd found. Not a school exactly, more like a business accelerator. The pitch was that they would teach her how to build an online consulting brand, handle clients, marketing, automation, all of it. She said they provided scripts, templates, and introductions to paying clients once you finished. The price was $18,000. She said it like it was an investment, not a cost. At first, I just listened. I assumed she was brainstorming. Then one evening, she said she needed to ask me something serious. She explained she couldn't get approved for financing because her credit history was short and inconsistent. She said lenders wanted someone with more stability attached to the application. Then she asked if I would take the loan out in my name. She said she would make every payment herself, that it was just a technicality, that I wouldn't actually be responsible because the money would come from her account every month. I said no right away. I didn't hesitate because the idea scared me immediately. I have no income. I'm waiting on disability approval that might not even happen. If anything went wrong legally, that debt would belong to me. I already feel tense every time I check my balance. Adding $18,000 to that felt unreal. She laughed when I said no, like I was joking. Then she started explaining why I was thinking about it wrong. She said I was focusing on worst-case scenarios. She said this was how people stayed stuck. She said I needed to stop acting like my life was over because of my health. I told her this wasn't about mindset. It was math. I can't sign for money I don't have. After that, every conversation turned into her trying again from a different angle. She'd send me voice notes late at night talking about how this could change everything for both of us. She said once the business worked, she could help me financially while I recovered, that I wouldn't have to stress anymore. That made me uncomfortable. I told her I didn't want to depend on her either. She started getting irritated. She said things like, "You're already struggling. Why not try something?" And "You're letting fear run your life." I stopped responding for a few days because I felt cornered. I didn't want every interaction to turn into a negotiation. Then one night, she sent me a message with a link to the financing portal. My personal details were already filled in. Name, email, everything. The only thing missing was the final signature. I called her immediately and asked what she was doing. She sounded excited, like she'd done me a favor. She said she was helping me get past hesitation, that once I saw how easy it was, I'd realize it wasn't a big deal. I told her to remove my information. She said I was overreacting and that she'd already spoken to someone from the program about us joining together eventually. That was the first time I got angry. I told her she had no right to put my name on anything without asking. She said I was making it dramatic and that she thought I'd trust her. After that, things changed between us. She started posting vague things on Instagram about people who choose comfort over growth. Mutual friends commented. Some messaged me asking if everything was okay between us. I didn't reply publicly because I didn't want it to become a spectacle, but it felt deliberate. She also started sending long voice messages where she sounded increasingly frustrated. She said she'd supported me emotionally for months while I struggled, and now I couldn't support her when she needed it. She said friendship wasn't supposed to be one-sided. stupid. I finally replied that emotional support and financial liability were not the same thing.
She didn't like that.
One night she called me and didn't even say hello before starting in on how the program deadline was coming up and I was making her look unreliable. I told her again. I never agreed. She started raising her voice, saying I kept changing my story. I told her my answer had been no from the beginning. She said I was using my health as an excuse to avoid risk. I snapped back that she was trying to use my credit because no one else would say yes. After that, we were both yelling, talking over each other, neither stopping. She accused me of wanting her to fail, so I wouldn't feel left behind. I told her she was trying to trap me in debt because she didn't want to do it alone. She said I'd become negative and bitter since I stopped working. I told her she'd stopped hearing anything that wasn't agreement. She hung up on me mid-sentence. The next morning, she sent a message saying she'd already told the advisor I was participating, and now she looked stupid because I backed out. That was when something in me shut down. I realized she had built this entire plan assuming my consent didn't matter. Like, eventually I'd give in just to stop the conflict. I told her clearly that the loan discussion was over, and if she kept pushing, I was stepping away from the friendship entirely. She replied that I was choosing money over 15 years of loyalty. I said I was choosing not to sign something that could ruin me financially. She told me I was selfish. I told her she was reckless. The conversation went in circles until I finally stopped responding. Since then, we haven't spoken. Update 1. I honestly thought things would calm down once we stopped talking. I figured distance would do what arguing couldn't. For about 2 weeks, that's what it looked like. No messages, no calls, no late-night voice notes. Silence. It felt strange after months of constant tension, but I assumed she'd redirected her energy into the business, and that was the end of it. Then people started approaching me in ways that didn't make sense at first. Not confrontational, just careful, like they were testing the ground before saying something wrong. Before I tell you what happened in this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment and tell us what you think about the story and how you would react. I want to hear your thoughts. Someone asked if I was still involved in that project. Another person said they hoped things worked out between me and R because it was sad when friendships fell apart over miscommunication. I didn't even know what they were talking about at first. Eventually, I realized she'd been talking about it publicly without actually naming me. She framed it like a story about betrayal without details. Posts about trusting people who disappear when things get serious. About how success shows you who really supports you. She never said loan, money, or my name, but the timing and details made it obvious to anyone who knew us. I didn't respond.
I didn't comment.
I told myself engaging would just make it worse. Then she tagged me in an old Facebook memory, a photo from years ago, both of us smiling, with a caption about loyalty and growing together through hard times. Underneath, she wrote something about how people change when they stop believing in you. I removed the tag. An hour later, she tagged me again. That's when I messaged her privately and told her to stop involving me in posts. I kept it short because I didn't want another argument. She replied with a long paragraph saying she wasn't attacking me and that she was allowed to share her feelings online. She said if I felt targeted, that was my interpretation. That irritated me more than I expected. I told her there's a difference between sharing feelings and indirectly blaming someone where everyone can see it. She said she wasn't responsible for how other people connected us. The conversation went downhill fast after that. She started accusing me of acting superior because I used to have steady work. I told her that was ridiculous and had nothing to do with why I said no. She said ever since I stopped working, I'd become negative and difficult to talk to, that everything had to revolve around my limitations. That one hit hard. I told her she had no idea what it felt like to constantly calculate whether standing too long would ruin the rest of your week. She said everyone had problems and at least she was trying to move forward instead of making excuses.
I raised my voice first that time.
I admit that. I told her she didn't get to decide what counted as trying when she wasn't the one dealing with my body shutting down. She started yelling back immediately, saying she was tired of walking on eggshells around me and that I'd turned into someone who expected the world to slow down for her. At that point, we weren't even talking about the loan anymore. It was old frustrations coming out all at once. Things neither of us had said before. She said she felt like she'd been carrying the emotional weight of our friendship for years. I told her support didn't mean I owed her financial risk. risk. She said I was selfish. I told her she was manipulative for trying to guilt me into signing something she knew I couldn't afford. We were both talking over each other, voices raised, neither listening. I could hear her moving around, doors opening and closing on her end of the call. She said I'd embarrassed her and made her look unreliable. I said she embarrassed herself by promising things on my behalf without asking. She hung up again. Within an hour, I realized she'd blocked me everywhere. Instagram, WhatsApp, even Snapchat, which neither of us use much anymore. It felt dramatic, but also final. I thought that was it. About a week later, someone sent me a link to her business page launch. She'd found financing through someone else and was promoting it heavily. Long posts about taking risks and not letting fear hold you back. In the comments, someone joked about fake friends who disappear when things get serious. She reacted to it with a laughing response. I wish I could say I ignored it, but I didn't. I posted something vague on my own page about not being responsible for other people's financial decisions and needing boundaries when money gets involved. I didn't mention her name, didn't mention details, but she saw it anyway. She unblocked me long enough to send a message accusing me of trying to sabotage her launch by making people feel sorry for me. She said I was playing the victim and dragging her reputation down because I couldn't handle seeing her succeed. That made me angry in a way I hadn't felt before. I told her I hadn't mentioned her at all and that if she saw herself in it, that wasn't my problem. She said everything I posted was obviously about her. I told her maybe she should stop making everything about herself. She replied that I'd become bitter since getting sick and that people were starting to notice. I told her at least I wasn't trying to pressure friends into debt to prove I was moving forward. After that, she stopped responding again. Update 2. About 3 weeks after my last update, R messaged me out of nowhere. No small talk, no apology. Nothing that sounded emotional at first. Just a long message saying things had gotten complicated and she needed to talk face to face because texting was making everything worse. She said she didn't want things to end like this after 15 years. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Part of me didn't want to reopen anything. Another part of me wanted it to stop hanging over everything. So I agreed. We met during the day, somewhere neutral. The moment I saw her, I knew something had changed. She looked exhausted. Not sad exactly, just tense, like she'd been running on adrenaline for too long. She didn't hug me, just sat down and started talking almost immediately. She said the person who helped her get financing had pulled back from being involved in the business itself. Not the loan, just the work. So now she was carrying everything alone, payments, clients, marketing, all of it. She said the leads they promised weren't consistent and she'd been scrambling to make it work. At first, she sounded calmer than I'd heard her in months. She admitted she'd been angry at me because I was the first person who refused to go along with the plan. She said when I said no, it felt like I didn't believe in her. I didn't interrupt. I let her talk, but then it shifted again. She said if I'd supported her in the beginning, she wouldn't have rushed into other arrangements and maybe things wouldn't have gotten so stressful. That maybe the pressure she felt later wouldn't have happened. I told her that wasn't fair, that I didn't control what decisions she made after I said no. She said I always pulled away when things got uncomfortable. I said she pushed harder whenever someone hesitated until they gave in. The tone changed fast after that. Not explosive at first, just sharp. Short sentences. Talking over each other again. She said she needed encouragement, not resistance. I told her encouragement didn't mean signing legal responsibility for someone else's debt. She said I'd become cold and transactional. I told her she'd stopped respecting boundaries the moment money entered the conversation. People nearby started looking over because our voices were rising without either of us noticing. Not screaming, but tense enough that it carried. She accused me of abandoning her when she needed confidence. Before I tell you what happened in this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment and tell us what you think about the story and how you would react. I want to hear your thoughts. I told her she was rewriting history to make me responsible for choices she made herself. She said I always assumed the worst about her intentions. I said she assumed agreement was the same thing as loyalty. Then she said something that flipped the entire conversation. She said, very flatly, "You think being sick makes you special, like everyone has to adjust around you." I don't think she even realized how harsh it sounded when she said it, but it landed hard. I felt myself get angry in a way I hadn't during the previous fights. this. I told her at least I wasn't trying to pull other people into financial risk just to prove I was succeeding. That if her plan only worked when someone else signed for it, maybe it wasn't as solid as she claimed. That's when she raised her voice fully, said I was jealous because her life was still moving while mine was stuck. I told her she didn't get to weaponize my health because she didn't like hearing no. She said I'd become impossible to talk to. I said she'd become impossible to disagree with. At that point, we were both talking loudly enough that the conversation wasn't private anymore. She stood up abruptly, said she didn't recognize who I'd become, and that I'd turned everything into a fight instead of just supporting her. I told her support wasn't obedience. She shook her head, said something under her breath I didn't fully catch, and walked out before finishing her drink. That was the last time we spoke. A few days later, I noticed she'd removed every photo of us from her social media. Not blocked, not dramatic announcements, just gone. Years of pictures disappeared quietly, like the friendship had been edited out instead of ended. I didn't message her. Since then, nothing. No indirect posts, no comments, no messages through other people, just silence. Mutual friends stopped mentioning her around me entirely. Online, it's like we exist in separate spaces now. I heard later through someone else that she's restructuring the business and continuing on her own. She hasn't mentioned me again publicly.
The end.
R tried to strong-arm you into co-signing $18,000 for her sketchy Boss Babe course because her credit's trash. When you said no, obviously, she guilt-tripped, gaslit, publicly shaded you with vague betrayal posts, weaponized your chronic illness. You think being sick makes you special? Erased 15 years of photos like you're dead to her, then cried victim when you set one single boundary post. She's a walking red flag factory who confuses support with sign here or you're a jealous hater. You protected your broke, disabled ass from becoming her financial crash dummy, NTA. Not even a little. You said no to debt slavery, and she turned into a full-on mean girl villain arc. Good riddance. Block remains king. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments, and let us know which one was your favorite.